today to chat with me, because I know you've got a great story to tell. Can we start with just doing a bit of a introduction to who you both are, a bit about you and how you live your life? Just, a little short intro.
This is like book club all over again, Laura. She makes us do this at book club.
Sounds quite existential. How do you live your life?
Yeah, how do you spend your time? How do you?
Let's go first.
No, I'll find out what the score is. The intro from you.
So I'm Jane Bellard. I may have seen some of you at book club in the past, and I used to live downstairs from Laura. That's how we met. Lived in St Albans for a long time. Now live in Weir, Hampstead, and so only a few minutes down the road. And I have 3 children, a husband. I'll go down the real book club route. I play hockey on a Wednesday. I've been doing some running at the moment.
Yeah, we like the picture. We like to create the picture. Yeah, I like the whole picture.
What did I have for breakfast this morning?
Yeah.
I'm doing some running at the moment, doing a charity 10k next weekend. So just trying to get fit again. Basically I own my own business. I've run my own marketing firm for the last 7 years, almost exactly, called Grapevines, and recently went into business in London, which we'll go on to in a minute, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's me.
Thank you.
So I'm Miranda Rennie, and I live in North Yorkshire, which is where we are at the moment. There are many puns coming your way because the agency that we've just started is called Weir. We're the agency.
Love it.
Yeah. So I've known Jane for about 3 years. It's just gone so fast. And we started working together at a water company where I was doing a small bit of brand consultancy, and we came across each other all online because it was during COVID, and it was a meeting of minds, and we had a great time working together. And I think from pretty early on we sort of earmarked each other as that's the kind of person I could spend a lot of time with and have very similar thoughts. So I lived in London for about 20 years and worked in the drinks industry. I ended up being a marketing director at a whiskey company, and about 6-7 years ago, my husband, who's originally from Yorkshire, had spent a long time trying to tell me we should move and cash in our chips from our really small flat in North London to buy somewhere up here. And we came and looked around this house, and we didn't look at anywhere else, and we moved up here. So that was kind of my big life-changing moment. And I was actually on maternity leave at that point, and then I got back into doing sort of marketing consultancy, I'm just really enjoying the fact that we can now do something which is a lot more purposeful, which we'll tell you about. But rather than trying to get people to drink more whiskey, at the moment we're trying to get people to use less water.
Yes, which I love. So thank you both of you for sharing. So I mean, I know a bit of your story, obviously, Jane, but I mean, from what I understand, your values and your passion have very much fed into the journey that you've been on. And so I wonder if you can tell people that a bit more about that, about how you've sort of got to where you are today.
So I always worked in marketing, consumer marketing, worked in big London agencies, mostly sort of ad agencies or below the line marketing agencies, like not paid media, and had always been trying to sell more stuff to people, and liked a lot of what I did. But when something just jars a little bit, and as I became more environmentally aware in the last probably decade or so, I definitely kind of wanted to do something a bit more purposeful. And actually the big kind of like moment for me was must be 5 years ago. One of my friends died, and she was 35 at the time. She was my old flatmate. It was very sad, and it just kind of made me sort of think, what am I doing? Like, what you only get one life, like you don't know how long you've got left. I've got to do something that matters, that makes a difference. I had 3 small children at that point, and a baby, and I guess, I don't know, 1, 3 and 1, 0, 3 and 5 or something like that. And I just thought, I've got to do something. I've got to like be a role model for them, show them that I'm doing something to leave behind a slightly better world than I entered, and also sort of wipe off the damage I have done by existing, if you like, because one of the most one of the worst things you can do for the planet is have children, as I discovered after I had 3. I was oh good, okay, well,
too late now.
Yeah, better try and make
As long as you don't get a dog. Oh
yes.
Yeah. No more dogs.
Yeah, you're right. And so I'd come at it from the point of view of like, right, I've got to do something that matters. And I had a bit of a crisis, and I was really struggling to find new business work at the time because I just couldn't work out what I wanted to do. But I had this real desire to do something that was more environmentally friendly. And so I'd drawn a diagram. I'll maybe see if I can find it. We can post it on here. I drew myself a little diagram and a bit of a list a while back.
I can remember that. You posted it on Facebook, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I did about 5 years ago, around that time. And I sort of like, what I want in life is a job where I am satisfied. I'm doing something that's using the skills I've got and the brain power that I've got while I've still got it. And then I wanted something that would work around my family in terms of fitting with the time around my family, so I could see them. So I wasn't just workaholic. And something that like improved the world. I can't remember what else was on there, but there was about 6 or 7 things. I remember at the time thinking it's a bit of a tall order, but you never know. And so then I sort of got this North Star, and I think that is something I would really, really recommend to people, because I found it's so helpful to be able to make decisions when you know this fits or this doesn't fit. And at the time I had been contemplating giving up my business, and so I had been sort of like just looking around at what was going on, and I got 3 job interviews in one day, and some of them were like projects and some of them were pieces of work, but one of them was this piece of work at Affinity Water, and it was to help redesign the bill that you, or most of the people on this call, will get. It has now been redesigned, so next time you look at your water bill you can think of me. Anyway,
okay, I will.
That project was going to save, it's saving about 1% of the water that we use, which is about, I don't know, it's a lot, isn't it? About a million litres
a day, yeah.
And so I remember at the time thinking, well, that fits with what I want to do. And the other work that I've got was longer pieces of work or potentially more lucrative ones. Like, no, that fits. And at the time it was only a 3-month contract. But because I'd done this bit of thinking on what I want, and I was able to really see the wood for the trees at that point and make the decision. And it's been the best thing I ever did, because but it meant that I was doing something that was really making a difference beyond just, I could do all the recycling I want to do and live off grid or whatever, but actually if I can affect change that lots of people do, then I can create a bigger, more sustainable impact than I could ever have as one human. And so that kind of got me thinking, and then I worked on several things. We did a very specific campaign in St Albans district called Save Thames Day, which we're actually talking about lots today, looking back. And we also then, that was the precursor for the SOS Save Our Streams campaign, which Miranda and I, is the first project that we worked on together, and Miranda still works on today. So it's in its 3rd year now, and it's been really, really successful. And then I'm now working on a project which will hopefully is a blueprint to make all new build houses water neutral in future, like carbon neutral, so that we never have to take any more water from the environment with the new houses we're building.
Wow. Yeah,
good job. But yeah, it's really exciting, and it's one of those things where you sort of think, actually, I don't know that I'd have got to this point if I hadn't had that crisis moment. And it's just fortunate, right? I've a lot to thank my the old neighbour who was the person who sort of spotted me to bring into Affinity Water at the time. But yeah, it's definitely, I get up with a real spring in my step, and even in the really, really intense times that we had, particularly on SOS in lockdown, and trying to launch something we had Sandy Toksvig in the stream, being live streamed from a stream, doing stand-up for us.
I remember that, yeah.
And we were allowed out of lockdown. So the first time we were allowed 30 people together. Like, okay, good, let's electrocute. It was a storm as well, but let's electrocute celebrities.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Even in those days, it was like, I'm really passionate about what I'm doing here. So like, I don't mind working really, really hard because it's doing something good. But yeah. Anyway, sorry, that's very long.
No, I love it, because that completely reinforces that's what's led you to what you're doing today.
And Miranda's had a similar journey. It felt very serendipitous that we kind of collided at the same time.
Because I think that, as I said, we found this house and it was amazing, and for our tiny London flat, we could move to this huge house, but
it's mega, by the way.
I need an invite, Miranda.
My whole house is a kitchen.
I'm popping by.
But we came and looked around, and the house itself is amazing, but it's a hydroelectric mill, so it's actually producing its own electricity, and it's got a biomass boiler, and it's also actually got a diesel generator and three different turbines. So we can literally live off the grid, and for 9 months of the year we're producing not only our own electricity but electricity for 3 of our neighbours. And in a water,
it's a water mill.
A water mill. So the river Weir runs outside our house, but we have some of it which is taken off. So there's a Weir which is about 500 meters upstream, and we take water that comes under our house, turns this turbine, and produces electricity. So I think that I was probably in that slight stage of no man's land in terms of my career when we were in London, and I'd had this really big job, and I went back in between my 2 children and just had whiplash from I was a different person. And I used to travel. I did international marketing. I was lucky enough to work for a brand that had lots of different countries in which it was successful, so I spent a lot of time traveling, and suddenly in the in-between bit, I didn't want to do that anymore. Actually going and doing a Asia Pacific trip for 10 days or going off to South America just sort of I wasn't excited by it in the least. And so I ended up sort of having my second maternity leave, which became eternity leave, because I decided not to go back, and the company was sold as well. So I'd been in this sort of slight limbo of having been very much, my identity was my job. If you asked me who I was, my first thing would be, I'm a marketing director, and that was who I was. And and clearly things had changed since I had children, but I'd then become, I think I then took on the PTA with the same kind of verve as
one of those.
Yes. I have full respect for those people.
As the person people avoided. No, I was very realistic. I was like, you could just do a donation if you don't want to come. But I think that it meant that I was really open to this big life change of moving to somewhere entirely different. And actually, from having had, I was joking with Jane earlier, a childhood of, CND stickers and Greenpeace stickers. Like my mum had gone to, the sort of Greenham Common marches and stuff. I had been very much kind of, the environment was something that we had to protect, and that you had to be active in that. And then we moved here, and it was suddenly like, I am taking an incredibly active role, and I had taken over that sort of concept. So then starting work at Affinity Water, where admittedly I'm sitting here in North Yorkshire and we're working on something in your region, but saving millions of litres of water a day, which meant that those millions of litres are going down your chalk streams and they're remaining in the environment, and all of the energy that it takes to abstract it, clean it, send it to someone's house, and them to then waste it. Those were the savings that we're making. So it's not just the water that we're saving, but we're saving the energy surrounding the water. And I think that I don't know whether it was fast or slow, but that kind of epiphany of, a couple of decades of working out what brands are, how you identify your target groups, what is it that the insight that you can give to them, and how do you then basically sell them something, suddenly was turned on its head. And you could say, we want to identify people who can make a positive impact by doing something less and giving them a really simple, easy way. You don't have to make massive changes.
Yeah.
Everybody making little changes can have a huge impact. And it suddenly, it felt really right.
I think as well, it was interesting, and you worked in marketing too, right, Laura?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very interesting suddenly being asked to get people to not use your product.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, actively stop them from using
Yes.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's definitely it was really interesting use of our previous skills for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I think that we not only got on very well personally, but that was this incredible alignment of
Yes.
what we wanted to use. And also from an industry point of view, Jane had come from sort of a really creative agency background, and I had sort of sat there poring over spreadsheets and strategy from the kind of client side.
Yeah.
And actually working together felt like there was a really complementary skill set of, you know, actually trying to go out. And what we've decided to do is stay within the same space. I mean, we talked about what kinds of projects could we do, and that may happen in the future, but I think that we have learned in the last 3 years so much about the water industry, and it really does feel that water is genuinely the next big crisis that is so under the radar at the moment, that because we are so lucky that we live in a country where it is freely available and taps, and we can drink it straight from the taps, and it very rarely runs out, and everybody thinks, oh, it rains all the time, and you know, it's our cheapest utility bill. That it's just not surfaced in the same way as many other crises that we're facing. But without it becoming another thing to worry about, we want to take hold of a very positive narrative that says you can make changes.
Yeah.
It's really simple. Yeah.
Well, I always have you in the back of my mind, Jane. You know, it's when I'm, you know, the taps, the kids are running the tap when they're cleaning their teeth, turn that off, or you know, like, okay, turn the temperature down on the washing machine, and you know, it's there. I know, Jane, small changes.
I think
So
you're hate me now.
You're always in my mind.
I don't mean to be. But it's interesting actually, Laura, how close the list, when we were looking at whether do we stay in water, we do something that is powerful to us, we had this big list of like topics that we're really interested in. So sort of like women's rights and things like menopause and you know, gender pay gap, and you know, loads and loads of things that are presumably bang on your kind of agenda as well. And we sort of looked, we were like, oh my God, there's so much to go out here. Like, we were like, actually, you know what, let's just focus on what we know and what we've got forming and start there. But actually, we saw a business advisor and she was like, it doesn't have to be like the end of the road here. This is just this is the first topic that you're tackling. And I was like, yes, you're right. And actually, it's exciting to feel like we might get on top of this topic and really make that difference, and then be able to tackle other things that we're also really passionate about.
Yeah. And I think that there was a point when we were trying to, because obviously both being all about the brand, we wanted to come up with the name that really worked.
Yeah. So tell us more about that.
We need to credit local copywriter Jane Bellard, who's marvelous.
So I think that we'd written a brief talking a lot about this kind of world of how we'd come together, and you know, that we wanted that the purpose that was at the core of what we wanted to do. And in the end, we decided, because we were going to stick with water, I think I was telling her about I was probably boring her about my 26 megawatts that I'm producing every hour. I was telling her about the copywriter, the process, the copywriter, and I said, and we've got a Weir where the water comes out, and she's like, Weir, what does a Weir do? I've heard of them, but I don't know what they do. And I said, well, I mean, it's a human intervention. It's a structure that's built into the river, but it's basically to push the levels of the river further upstream so that actually the drop is greatest. but it also can, help wildlife, and it can also help with flooding and management. So it's sort of like it's an intervention. And then she sort of picked up on that, didn't she? And she said, a Weir is a really interesting concept, because it's an intervention, but it's an intervention for the good.
Yes.
And for
the local
support.
environment and the river. It's like, whoa.
Again,
So-
it felt right. Yeah.
So we've subsequently spent the next 6 months saying, Weir.
Yes. Well, I love it. And yeah, I just love the fact that, I mean, with the talks I do with women like you, obviously there is an acknowledgement of the privilege of being able to take the steps that you've taken, that not everyone has that. But I love that what you have done is just made those incremental steps that have got you to where you are today. So even if people aren't planning to move to Yorkshire or set up a water saving business, it's those small steps that can, or those just little things can move the dial.
And I think one thing that Jane has really given to me, which I just did not have, is a really clear belief that you can run your own business. And her entrepreneurial spirit, sort of hearing about the events that she was running when she was at university, and subsequently has always had sort of like these different projects going on, that 7 years ago she made that decision to set up her own business, and has steadily had a really strong sort of set of work coming through, that I don't think that I would have ever thought, if you'd have spoken to me 10 years ago when I was sitting there in London in my office. It's like, no, this is the only way to do it. You sit in an office and you work for someone else, and you sell someone else's product that at some point was someone else's dream. And there's this sort of actual sort of revelation that actually you can do it for yourself, and you can do things that are still going to keep you afloat but be purposeful.
Yeah, I don't think it's as hard as a lot of people think, and I don't want to downplay it, because it's also not easy, of course. But I think if you can be really clear about what you want to do, and there's a market for it, of course. What we have found, and particularly when we were like doing that, let's bring it back down to just water saving, because there's all these things we can do. But actually, we are both mums. We both work 3 days a week, and we work them through school hours, or I do 7 till 3, Miranda does them over 4 days. And the only way I could see to do that, and to have that flexibility and the earning power still, was to go self-employed. And actually that isn't that many hours in a week to fill, really, that you have to like sell, if you like. We're not trying to become some sort of massive conglomerate. In fact, somebody was telling me about this yesterday, I think my brother. There is now like a trend in, what do you call it, like non-growth businesses, or something, where you're actually trying to just stay this size, do something that is just filling your time in a really constructive way, in the right sort of pay grade that you want, and in doing something that you really want to do. And that's the reason to do it, not to try to grow.
It's not just, is this scalable? How much can I make my,
because that's not where we want to be. And we had that conversation when we started. Actually, when you start a business where there's two of you, you have to basically a bit like a prenup.
But you do. That's the reality, isn't it?
With a legal agreement.
What happens if we fall out? What happens if one of us dies?
We're like, what happens if you become an asshole?
Let's write down something for that.
We also realised we better not travel together, or our husband's going to end up running
don't get on the same plane. I don't think either of our husbands would be
up their wheelhouse. No. So but it isn't as difficult. Like in terms of actually starting a business, it's actually a couple of pieces of paperwork. It's not that hard. But it's like, are you somebody who's got the motivation to get up every day and make your own to-do list and do it? Because actually, I think that's something I see. I see people who have their own businesses who are perhaps struggling with it more. And I think that's where you haven't got this like really clear, my goal is to sell this, or to buy this, or to do this, whatever the thing is. and everything has to point in that direction, because it's really easy to go, well, I might just do this, or I actually could add this to it. It's like, no, you've got to keep this real laser focus. And if you're doing it on your own, one of the things I found really difficult about doing it on my own was you haven't got anybody buoying you up. You haven't got anybody to complain to when you know, if the books, and even if you've got employees, they're not peers. They don't want to hear the woes of a business. They want to hear that it's all secure and safe. And you know, it's lonely. It definitely, you know, they sort of say it's lonely at the top. I mean, it's not like it was the top of much, but it was. But I got it.
Yeah, you were at the top. You were the one.
And the bottom. But I've had like long-term freelancers and stuff work for me in the past, and so you sort of got a bit of a team. But even so, you're like, it's not a team in the same way. It's not peers.
And there's a responsibility of a kind of, you know, that you're paying for them and their livelihood, and the more you get to know them, then the harder that can become. Whereas actually we'll be shoulder to shoulder in it, and
which feels really nice.
Yeah. It's having that accountability as well, I guess. You know, you're there supporting each other. You've got a commitment to each other. You can hold each other accountable. You're both bringing different things into it.
We just have to remember not to chat too much when we're actually trying to do stuff.
Definitely going to be the downfall of our business if this goes under.
The less chatty side of business. And what else supports you in being able to do what you're doing? So in terms of whether that's
financially,
time management, family life, like what sort of makes it doable to have the setup that works for your family? Like what's the reality, I guess, of juggling it all?
I would say, I mean, it does. I'm not going to lie, it helps to have had, my husband is employed, so we know that there's an income. So, and it's not, you know, it's not like we can live off that alone. Well, we could change our lifestyle, whatever, but we need for me to have a similar income, but we wouldn't be on the streets if my business fails, right? Or if, you know, we've had lean times in the business before, but we've also had, you know, abundant times, and so it's sort of you don't, it's very hard to plan. And every year I sort of sit down and go, but how much have we got in savings? Like, well, it's really hard to say because we've got it and it's in the business. We could use it, we could compress it. Like, it's, you know, you having one person with a solid income allows you the freedom to have the other person not. And so I'm really grateful to my husband for having that sort of steady income and steady job that's got a bit of fallback. But having said that, you know, in COVID times, he was suddenly put down to 3 days a week, and you're suddenly like, oh, that stability we thought we had actually isn't very stable. And it was fine in the end, but actually in COVID times, it suddenly became, the swing went the other way. What I had was more, not technically more stable, and that it was a contract, but it was a contract that had a certain amount of time in a PO. There's, in some ways, it was more steady. So I think there's an illusion of steadiness that comes with a job. But Stephen has been in his company a long time, and so there's the sort of, well, if he got made redundant at the end of the world, there would be a bit of a slack in the rest of it. I think that is really important. I don't think it means that you can't run a business when you've got nobody else in you know, financially in partnership with you. But I think you would have to have a bigger buffer. And I think that's really crucial. And you'd have to also, I guess it's like, what's your fallback position, right?
Yeah, that's it.
When it goes, like, if it goes tits up, what is the plan? Because that's,
you can't bury your head in the sand, and you know, you've got to have a bit of your money mindset on the worst case scenario, and just have your
and there's a bit of childcare and stuff. Like, you know, we do breakfast club for the kids, but I've changed my working day to 7 till 3, so I'm at home after school every day with the kids, and that was a real game changer actually, because you can still get the same amount of work. It means you've been more knackered probably, but you sort of 7 go. And actually, Stephen working from home allows me to do that because he can drop them at breakfast club. So there's definitely that sort of like partnership thing that does make it definitely easier. Like, I wouldn't pretend it doesn't. But I think that they're the main things for me that allow me to what I do.
And the simple answer is I'm in a very similar position, that my husband works full time, and admittedly he works in London, So he gets the train down and goes down to London for 2 or 3 days a week. So I'm sort of in charge of my girls, who are a bit older. So, you know, they're 12 and 10. So, you know, it's not quite the same as when they're really little, but they still need to be taken everywhere. And, you know, you want to back them doing all these clubs and singing in the, like,
that's another job in itself.
cathedral choir and football and everything, but sheesh, it racks up the miles. So yeah, I think that I absolutely recognise my privilege of the fact that, you know, I'd worked really hard and we'd saved up, and for a long time my husband and I were both working hard and saving and putting it into the house effectively, which allowed us to do the move. And then he was putting in the hard yards with the, like, earned working hours, but I was putting in the hard yards with the small people. And it is amazing when you realise how much childcare costs. That I think that was one of the things that when I had the second child, that it was suddenly like, what? And you realise that school hours aren't work hours. And so you're gonna have to do some other stuff. So I think that in terms of my evolution into thinking it was going to be possible, that period of a total life change anyway made that reassessment much more natural. And actually now I also run the business of the making of the energy, which, you know, requires some, it's been quite a sharp learning curve.
I can imagine.
My psychology degree not quite so to sort of sorting out what's happened to the gearbox on top of the turbine, but that has been it. They talk about mindfulness. There's nothing like having to sort out, you know, a sheep stuck in the grate of the Weir, or you know,
you really are getting it all.
Oh yeah. And I think for the first birthday that I had after we moved up here, and Si at that point I think was working 4 days a week down in London, my birthday present was a set of waders.
I've got a pair of them now, actually.
Well, given the work you do, I mean, it's a given, surely, that you've got your waders.
I see a photo for the website.
I'm looking forward. I hope they're branded. You're going to get some branded.
We have some branded.
Come on.
It's a really attractive look, isn't it? The wader.
But I think that for me, having 2 girls, there was a moment in time where I think, you know, when we moved up here when they were 6 and 4, and it was suddenly daddies go to work and mummies look after, and I was like, no. And as much as you can say, actually, mummy used to have a big job.
They don't get it.
No, they don't get it. And in a way, the privilege of being the one that solidly is there for them, you know, drying them off after their swimming lessons is fantastic. But I'm really pleased now that they can see that it's tangible, that I am working in a slightly different way to daddy, that I do, you know, I actually end up probably working all of the school hours and some evenings. But they know, and they recognise that actually, well, that's why we could go on holiday.
And do you know, I think it's a really good point. I also add to that COVID really helped, because they can see you working. I remember my kids being like, so what do you do? Because all they saw was, Stephen leaves the house, or I would go up to the spare room and be sitting on a computer. They didn't see the work happening, and they couldn't see it. But when you can sort of take them down to the local stream and sort of say, this is this much higher, like how much water's in there, there's ducks in there, because everybody's doing their bit and not using as much. And that's sort of, it's really nice to be able to sort of see them. But I think women do end up having an opportunity at that point when you go back from maternity leave that perhaps isn't as natural a break in either men's careers, which I think is changing, because a lot more men are taking maternity. But also, if you don't take a career break for any particular reason, I think it is an automatic kind of reappraisal of life at that point, when you're like, well, I've either got to go back to what I was doing but be minus £1,000 a month, whatever, for childcare, or I probably am some, and we just
where are you getting your childcare, Jane?
Our last child has started school, so our childcare bill suddenly like dramatically dropped. I was like, God, this is
So you
great.
bought a new car.
Yeah, I feel like we've got another person earning in the business, in the partnership, in the marriage. But the point I was trying to make, yeah, you're sort of like going back to work isn't the same as it was, because you're suddenly all this money down, and it feels like it comes out of your wages, right? It's because it's like, well, if I go back to work, then we're this minus this, whereas if I don't go back to work, we're just minus this.
Yeah.
And it does sort of, I guess, make you stop and go, right, what are my options? And also, when you've got to pay so much for childcare, there's this like, how like, is it worth it? It's got to be worth it. So I do think that's a big reappraisal moment in life. But it doesn't mean that other people shouldn't. I do really, we've got, you know, friends who are just at a crossroads in career, you know, sort of like, no, do something that makes you really happy. Like,
and I guess even if it's, you know, 5 years back, it wasn't necessarily for you guys that it was, I'm going to be setting up my own water saving company, but you were taking on work that felt was becoming more in alignment with your values and passions. And I guess if
you were probably more mindful of that, whereas mine was sort of, as I was doing some of these projects, it was like, I feel so much better and more engaged in this. But yours was very purposeful, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a real swerve moment. But I do think it's that North Star and knowing what that looks like. What is the thing? And if you can be as crystal clear as possible about it. Like for me, it was like, I need to do something that improves the world.
Yeah.
And that was, and I didn't expect that to look like water. But it just happened to fall into something that you then recognize. So I was like, okay, I can do it like this. And I really wouldn't have guessed it would be water. And I wouldn't have guessed my original business, Grapevine, is that this is how it would go. But yeah, I think it's just kind of like follow what feels right, and you'll end up somewhere, you know, in the right direction. And just course correct as you go. But.
Yeah. And taking that time, whether it's at some point just pressing the pause button. So if it's writing it down like you did, Jane, or actually having moments, Miranda, where you paused and reflected and realized, oh, actually, this is what I have been doing, and then being open to, let's go to Yorkshire. I mean, it's sort of giving yourself that chance to be open to things instead of, you know, what we got told at school. It's like, come and look, press some buttons on this computer, and are you going to work for the council, or are you going to, like, what desk job are you going to do? It was also, this is what you do. And so stepping out of that is
interesting, isn't it? Because, and I think I'd already felt, even in the sort of the midst of my career in London, like my mum's a solicitor and my dad's an architect. That's what they're trained for, and that's what they spent their whole careers doing. And I think I realised quite early on, I've got no idea what I want to do, but I know I don't want to do either of those things. And I don't have a real kind of clear idea of what I want to do. So I think I had always been very open to what was going to happen, and then had ended up falling into marketing.
So
it's like that's what everybody does who doesn't know what else they want to do.
Who's unsure, we'll do that.
You properly did a PR degree, didn't you? Yeah.
I know how to open champagne. Really good at it. I remember my friend teasing me. He's like, "Oh, are you doing cutting or sticking today?" And I'm like, and then I joined a PR agency, and they're like, "Here is a bunch of press clippings. Can you stick them in this book?" I was like, "Oh my God, I've got an actual degree."
And now look at you. Now look at you, Jane.
I can cut really well and
you can cut really well and save water. You're not just a one-trick pony. So
my Pritzstick game is on point.
So I want to just quickly ask you, so what's sort of next for the business? What are you, in an ideal world, like, who are you working with? What can you tell us that's not top secret?
So we are just about to get the sign on the dotted line, hopefully, on a new water saving campaign. Not dissimilar to the Save 10 a Day that we did in St Albans. Really, really exciting. And hopefully that will be our first official brief as we're still working on our existing projects as well, for the SOS campaign for Affinity Water and this innovation project that I'm working on with the regulator, the off what people can regulate water. And but I think in terms of where we want to go, we've got ideas of big things that we want to do. I think one of the key things that we're really excited about is that Miranda talked about this. It's the next big crisis. It's sort of like, I feel like we need the blue planet kind of moment with water. And it's like, how do we make that happen? Because we're independent. We're not a water company, and but we've been inside them, and we know what they can and can't say. We know how they can and don't operate, and the way that the water industry is structured is a bit strange and unusual because it's a monopoly, and it's so heavily regulated. But how can we use our position as independent people to try to really make that, like, break through that agenda point? So yeah, I don't know what the future holds in terms of actual projects, but we are looking at some innovation funding through the regulator and try and maybe work towards getting a nationalised campaign, because that's the problem. The water companies are all local, and there needs that national voice. I think it's missing. So kind of, yeah.
Well, that sounds very exciting. And anyone watching that doesn't think about you in the toilet, Jane, aside from, I found myself telling a child the other day about the three P's that go down the toilet. Wasn't my own child, but I just felt like as I saw them putting the hands, the towels that you dry your hands with down the toilet, and I was like, whoa, no. So I started telling this child about the 3 P's.
Very good.
So yeah, it's there. Yeah,
not the hand drying one.
No. So any top tips for today for those of us that are watching this, can't move to Yorkshire and have their own Weir, but what can we do
to save water?
Yes.
I
Putting you on the spot.
No, I think there's almost too many to choose from. I think one of the biggest uses of water is a shower. And particularly over the last sort of 10-15 years, people with power showers. So about 15 litres in 1 minute. So imagine that in 15 litres of Evian bottles. So every minute that you have less in the shower, and it's actually really easy. So the average time in the shower is something like 9 minutes. Just make it a little bit less.
Yeah.
Or step in it sooner, because I think one of the things, I'm sure there are people who are waiting for it to warm up who haven't realised how fast it warms up.
Yeah.
But
I always started getting into mine cold, just because then I feel like it ticks off the
cold.
I
think Wim Hof has done a big favour.
No waiting, just get in.
But I also think that white goods, so like dishwashers and washing machines, they're huge users of water. So eco mode or an eco program, big users of electricity as well. So put it on 30 degrees.
Yeah.
I was staggered to find out one load of washing on a non-eco cycle is 80 litres. That's the same as a full bath. That's how much water it used. It's about half, or just slightly less than more than half. So 35 litres you would save if you just use the eco button. And don't be fooled, it's not the quick button. It's usually quite slow. And people sort of think, well, how can something that's eco take loads longer? But it's like less power hungry energy. It's using the same water for longer. It's spinning it around more gently. So I think we worked out you can save about 150 quid a year on your energy bill from heating that water alone, let alone everything else.
2 minutes less in the shower is 400 quid on average for a home in a year. If you just have 2 minutes less.
It depends how long your showers are in the first place to see if you can get 2 minutes.
Yeah. If you're only on 3 or 2 minutes, then well, good luck. Well done.
Focus on
already on our team.
Yeah.
Don't need to worry about it. Yeah. And also coming up for summer, although I don't know about down with you, but it's raining here today. Don't forget, if you plug in a hose, that can be 1,000 litres an hour. So if you just leave a hose running, so get a water butt, use a watering can. If you've got like a trigger thing, then you could kind of like, you just use it where you need it, so you can often save loads. But like the average person in a day uses about 150 litres. So if you think, if you've got a hose on for an hour, and that's 1,000 litres, I think a lot of this is about visualising it and just and knowing why. So huge amount of energy is used to get the clean water to your house, and it's taken out of the environment. So just leave it in the environment, don't waste it.
Yeah, that's it. We don't mind people using water.
Yeah, like you're allowed to use water. Yeah.
It's wasting the water that we are trying to remove.
Yeah.
But if there's a tap on and there's nothing under it.
Yeah.
Don't leave the tap on for your teeth cleaning. That's
full washing machines only.
Or I'll come round to your house.
Yeah. Don't worry. Look, there you go. There's about 17 tips for you.
Sorry,
I'm loving that. Right, I'm just going to go onto our page just in case anyone's been asking us anything, because I haven't been.
Probably all busy working.
Yeah, they're probably switched off.
No. Life changes, love that. Laura's saying hi, lovely to see familiar faces. She's worked with you both at Affinity.
Yes, at Affinity.
Hi. Leonora's talking about water crisis in South Africa.
They got to day zero. And it's the sort of thing we think wouldn't happen here, but could, like, it's feasible. And I did a focus group, interestingly, relatively recent, like January, and somebody said, "Oh well, if the problem was this bad, you've told us by now." And you're like, "No, this is what this is. I'm telling you."
This is us telling you.
Yeah.
And I think that the water companies are in such a bad way at the moment in terms of their public perception, and there are so many things that people are pushing back against, you know, sort of investment and ownership and sewerage and leakage, and, you know, there's a lot of problems which are absolutely need to be sorted out, but so many people then use that as the reason not to save water. It's like, you sort out your stuff before I have to sort out mine. It's like, well, actually those two things have to happen concurrently.
If we can all do it.
There are loads of leaks that need to be sorted, and indeed sewers need to be upgraded, and the storm drains need to be sorted out, and rivers need to be looked after. But actually that doesn't give you the right to put one thing into the washing machine and then they go, well, it doesn't matter, it's only 80 litres. That's nothing compared with what they're wasting on their leaks. It's like, every little helps.
To give you an idea of the SOS campaign, which is only for Affinity's region, about 1.8 million houses, we'll be saving
23 this year. 23 million litres a day has been saved through that campaign, through people just engaging with making these little changes and just getting the updates, and also getting free devices. Most water companies now just give away like little tap filters, so it feels like the same amount's coming out, only it's about half. Same with the shower head. And we're saving like 23 million litres a day, but the leakage problem is, you know, 150 million litres a day. So people use that to bash them around the head and say, wow, if you're leaking that much through your system, why should I be saving? It's like, it's about all going together in the same direction. We can't wait until all of those problems are sorted out before we start on people's behaviour.
It's about all doing our bit. I love that. It's small changes, doing our bit. I've loved chatting with you both today. There's a lot of love for you. I'm looking at the messages. People are finding you very inspirational and wishing you lots of love and luck in your campaign and all your work going forwards. Jane is in the group. Miranda, you're very welcome to come over into the Facebook.
Honorary member next time I'm down.
Come and see us as well. I might, you know, pop up to see how it's done at the in your
retreat it.
If you're ever going up the A1, very close.
Pop in. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm gonna put any of your details or links that you want me to share, I'll pop them in this recording. And if anyone's got any questions after, and if you're watching on replay, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So I'm going to say bye to everybody that's watching us.
Thanks so much for your time.
All right, and thank you. Thanks, Miranda. Thank you, Jane. Bye, everyone.